Hello. You are listening to the Carroll Connection with your host, Jared Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Carroll Connection. I'm your host, Jared Carroll, here to bring you guys another great episode. I did want to take a chance to shout out my last episode 164 with Andrew Wu. It was his first appearance since I think it was 12. I have to double check. I should have checked that before. It's been a minute since I recorded, so forgive me, but it's been a long time since he's been on the podcast. I think it was actually 11. It was 11 because I remember I was talking about the history of doing podcasts and reaching episode 10 and then getting to 11 was like a big thing with podcasting. So it was episode 10 or episode 11. Correct myself right there. I already caught it. But it was a great podcast to talk with him about what he's been through since going through the pandemic and with his business and just the whole solar industry in general. It was a really great podcast. You can check it out, thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available on YouTube. You can search the Carroll Connection or Jared Carroll. Should come up right for you. And if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, hit me up on Instagram at Jared Carroll or at the Carroll Connection, and we'll set that up. So that brings me to today's episode 165, coming in hot for 2024. This is the 2023 year in review episode, and I brought back a familiar face. Last appeared on episode 83 when I had Jake on the podcast as well, where we talked about childhood friendships. So bringing back a familiar face, Andrew Brown.
What's going on, man?
Welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Glad that we're able to set this up today and do this podcast. And it's been literally, I was talking about before on the podcast or off the podcast, that it's been since 2021, that December timeframe when we recorded that, where I had just the one camera and now we got the 3 different angles, and it's a little different now, a little different.
I mean, time definitely flies, and like coming back and seeing like the whole setup now, it's awesome to see the growth and how things go from there, man.
Yeah, it's been it's crazy to think back. I forget your first appearance. I think it was like episode, I want to, for some reason I'm thinking like 30s. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It was around that number for me, and at least what I'm seeing in my head, because I remember doing the clips and it was just really like the pictures that I would do. Like I had like 3 pictures or whatever, and then audio. And it's just crazy to see the growth, not only for the podcast, but for me and for you as well. And I think this will be a really great episode to kind of reflect on things and talk about 2023 in general. But first, I'll let you take the floor and kind of catch us up since 2021 and what's happened up until this point, basically. And then we'll get into 2023.
Yeah, man. So, I'm still coaching football. I'm at UMass Dartmouth, still coaching the defensive backs. Since 2021, we've gone on to be pretty successful. We've won a few conference championships, a few bowl game appearances, a playoff appearance last year. But living life, man.
Yeah.
Going through it, having fun, doing new things, trying whatever's out there.
How has the progression been with the coaching? Because I know a lot of the stuff we talked about in prior episodes, you were talking with like doing stuff with the Renegades, and you were doing stuff at the high school level. And obviously since then you've progressed to go back to Dartmouth and help coach there. So talk a little bit about that progression in coaching and coaching at the different levels and how that's helped you be successful at the collegiate level now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, growing up, it was always the offensive side of the ball. You and me played receiver together. And then, once I went on to the coaching side of things, it was always offense, working with receivers or offensive coordinator. And then when I went on to college ball, that was my first year ever coaching the defensive side of the ball. So it was all brand new. And, my first year, I was hired about a week before the season started. So it was just like, hey, here's our playbook, figure this shit out. But it was great. I'm always someone that's up for the challenge. So, I went into it. I learned everything on the spot. And it really opened my eyes up, because as a young kid, I'm like, all right, shit, I know everything. Like, I got this. This is easy. And then you go into that and it's like, this is a completely different aspect. So, it definitely opened my eyes up to see things from a different perspective and just understand that no matter how good you think you are, there's always more to be learning and doing. So, we had success from the start, which is awesome. But me as a person, as an individual who's now coaching and getting more used to the collegiate life, it's it's difficult, but at the same time, I see the growth that I've made from the beginning of my coaching career. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for is continuing to see the growth. Um, using that as motivation to move forward and continue to learn as much as possible.
Yeah, I can imagine the games being played from high school to women's professional to the collegiate level. The style of play could be different. How has that been adjusting to different offenses, different defenses, and like just the whole style of play? Because obviously high school is going to be a little bit slower at times. It's a little bit more probably prone to mistakes being made just because they're younger, obviously. And then you go to women's professional where it's they're professional, so they're gonna know how to play a little bit better. You might have to coach them up in different aspects, but it's a very, and especially being very successful with the Renegades. They're a very great football team, so they've had a lot of success in the area. So you've been a part of winning coaching there, and then going to Dartmouth and bringing that attitude to them. So talk to me a little bit about the style of play at each of those different levels because it's obviously different.
Yeah, so like you said, high school ball is very much like you are at the base of everything. You have some kids who have never played before. You have some kids who have been playing since they were 7 years old. Um, so with them, it's trying to find the balance of like teaching things as simple as possible. With the Renegades, it kind of transitioned into okay, they have the basics of it. Now let's give them those next kind of steps that'll make their game much better. Um, it's funny because with the college level, it's so much fun in the aspect of like they know what they're doing, they're very intelligent. Now it's like giving them the reason why behind the reason they do things. So like our defense is primarily all man to man. So like we use different techniques for our man coverage and like all this stuff. So it's so cool to see how athletic a kid is. And then you go to the film room and it's like this is when you use the technique that you're supposed to and watch how good it works for you. And then this is when you just try to be an athlete. And you could be the best athlete on the field, and if you don't have the right technique, it means nothing. Um, so taking that kind of thing and being able to take the best of both worlds between the pro level where they understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and taking the basics and kind of finding that happy medium, but then bringing the energy because at the end of the day, they're all 18 to 21-year-old dudes who, just love flying around and hitting things.
Yeah,
So,
and I can imagine too having played at that level as well too. You got a little bit of experience playing on that level and with that team as well, so you're kind of comfortable in the area, or comfortable with the organization on some level. So entering from player to coach, did that help you in the collegiate level? Because obviously I know when you coach at the high school level, you're familiar with the coaches as well there. But did that help you at all in the collegiate level? Because obviously you're playing completely kind of different positions, and you're going to be more hands on as a coach. So how was that transition, and did that prior experience at the university help with coaching?
oh, for sure. So obviously, I knew all the coaches when they had asked me to come coach with them. Um, I played for some of them. The defensive coordinator was there when I played there. So going into it, it's just like you're going back with your family at the end of the day. Like everyone is just wicked close. You shoot the shit every day. Um, and it's fun to kind of bring that into the relationship with the kids too, where like you're able to have a good time, but like when it's time to work, you're working. And they really understand why you're pushing them that hard. It's because you want what's best for them.
Yeah, I want to dive into that relationship with the college players. Is like, did you find it hard at first to separate that coach relationship, the coach player relationship, and then also trying to be their friend on some level too? Because obviously you're not that far off in age. So like, how did you manage that? Because at least with high school, there was at least a little bit bigger gap where at least the whole you'd been to college, you've been out of high school for a while, so like they're gonna they're gonna see that you're younger, but there's gonna be that gap. With college, the gap's a little bit smaller. So how did you adjust to that?
Yeah. So my first year coaching at UMass, there were guys that were seniors that year who I played with. So they see me and they're like, "Hey, what's up, Brown?" So kind of trying to be like, "Hey, it's not Brown anymore, like Coach." But it's always that level of respect being a younger coach and being able to they get where you're coming from a little more than maybe some of the older guys. Um, but it's more so at that point, just being like they're gonna heat check you. So it's gonna be like, all right, how much does he really know? How much can he really benefit the team? Um, So, trying to learn the playbook in a week's notice, and then when you come to them with a valid answer, like, all right, shit, he actually knows what he's doing. Like, let's rock with it. Um, between that and then finally finding like that happy medium between like getting a good hard working practice in versus like just being there to shoot the shit. Um, Especially some of the younger guys now, like trying to find that balance is definitely still tough, but it's a blast. I love it.
How do you adjust to like the time period that we're kind of living in post COVID with coaching some of these younger football players that, as they come up and graduate high school, went through that COVID process, probably lost a year of sports. Um, in terms of coaching them up in their skill level, uh, and even just connecting with them mentally too has probably been a little bit difficult or a different challenge for yourself to kind of approach them in a different way. How do you handle that part of the game where it's not so much teaching football, but sometimes you have to coach a little bit on the life aspect? Have you been in situations like that? And if so, how do you handle that?
Yeah, man. I mean, the thing that I'm noticing now is football is more about what's going on off the field than it is on the field. You're with some of these guys for hours and hours and hours a day. Like this becomes your second family. So like you get to learn a lot about kids and like their upbringing and like financial situations. And we all know college is not cheap. So the biggest thing that I always try to teach my kids now is like if you keep your grades up, you get money to go to school. Like it helps you in the long run. Like your family is spending so much money for you to be here right now that not everyone has the opportunity to do. Like take advantage of that. Like you have the capability and the opportunity to do something huge here, and you not doing what you're supposed to, or you like taking advantage of that is just like you're doing a disservice to your family. But not only that, it's like you're doing a disservice to yourself and your future and like what you want to do when you get out of school.
Do you think the injuries that you suffered as a player help you when you're trying to connect on that level to like paint this picture of like take advantage of this type of situation? Because in your head you're like, I lost a lot of these opportunities because of injuries, and it obviously affects not only the stuff on the football field, it's going to affect your stuff in the classroom as well. So like, does that situation with the injuries help in your coaching career?
Absolutely. And like that's the thing that I probably preach to my kids the most is like you never know when you're going to take that helmet off for the last time. Like you never know when the last time you're going to be able to strap up a chin strap or your shoulder pads or whatever it might be. So take advantage of like your last conditioning run that you have to do, your last hit that you could get on someone. Like that ball's in the air, like go get it. Like, or even the simple things at practice. Like I always preach, like, this could be the last time you ever do this. So like, why not make it your best one? And I tell them all the time, I'm like, if I could put a helmet on right now, like you wouldn't see me stopping once. Eh, it's so easy to just live in the moment and be like, oh, whatever, I have to do this tomorrow, or like I get to another year to look forward to this. But like, you never know what life's gonna throw your way, and like you could just be done. And now it's a lot of what ifs that you have to live with instead of like, no, I gave this my all. So I really try to preach like the live and play with no regrets as much as possible.
Yeah, it's kind of the mindset of how you do one thing is how you do everything.
That's it.
And if you continually approach your life in that mindset, you'll be a lot more successful, because it really is the small things that will add up to the bigger picture. And I think even in terms of this episode, as we'll start to pivot towards like kind of reviewing this year, it really is kind of getting back to those basic concepts in life and really starting to reflect on what's working, what's not working. And I talked about on my birthday episode that I had, was this year was a lot of not so much taking a step backwards, but taking a step back and reflecting to take the next step forward that's going to benefit me in the long run. And I don't think enough of us will look at that kind of step as that, because if you think you're taking a step back, you're like, I'm regressing.
Right.
But sometimes you do need to take a step back to just reflect on what's happening in order to assess things to make the appropriate step forward. So I kind of want to pivot with us to kind of start looking at the 2023 year as a whole. So I kind of let you take the floor and we'll kind of riff off this stuff. But talk to me a little bit about the kind of the beginning of the year, kind of the stuff that you were going through, and maybe some of the highlights as we've gone through the year.
Yeah. So I can say from the beginning of this year, my biggest thing was obviously like I got big into fitness again. Um, with everything that's happened with my knee and how much time it's taken away from me being able to do anything physical. This year it was kind of like I'm gonna find ways that I can still get to the gym. Stay active and do these things without it affecting my life so much, without my knee hurting or acting up or like anything like that. So I spent a lot of time this year in the gym, and that's been more of a help than anything else that I could say has happened this year.
Yeah, let's focus on the gym stuff too, because like I could actually build off that as well with the fact that I suffered a hamstring injury at the beginning of the year, and that
And flag
really
football.
flag football, and that really like took away from my gym this year. And like I've been telling people, like this has been one of my best years that I've had in a really long time, and in terms of the gym, it's been one of the worst
Yep.
because I just haven't been able to do the stuff that I normally do because of the injury. Like I went to PT twice for this thing, and now it's finally starting to get to that place, but it really highlights the importance of the gym and how it's not always just about like the lifting and the weights, the getting stronger. It's the mental aspect too, because I noticed, especially early with that injury, I was doing really good in the gym, and then to have that progress just wiped off the board was like kind of a weird reset, and trying to like cope with that throughout the year was very difficult for myself. And as someone who's suffered a lot of injuries, you could probably relate to that mindset, especially what you're talking about here with the knee injuries, that you weren't able to lift the way that you would have liked to lifted. So, going off of that, that's kind of like a perfect segue to talk about the importance of the gym. And what you're saying here is not always about just getting stronger, but it helps you like really like format your life and give you a lot of structure, because consistency in the gym will translate to whether it's like if you're playing sports or your relationships or even in your work life. Just showing up to something is going to have a positive impact.
Absolutely. I can say one of the biggest things with the gym for me this year is the dedication that it takes, in order to get there. So like there's plenty of days where you're like, it's cold out, it's raining. It's like I just don't want to get up. I don't want to go to the gym. Um, but just the reminder and the constant like, hey, you got to do this, you got to make it. Just get in your car and go. Um, Even on those days, you leave the gym and it's just like weight lifted off of your shoulders, and you're like, all right, I made it through. Like my body feels better. Like, for me, the gym is so much more of like you were just saying, it's a mental thing where like your body is sore and like it feels good, but at the end of the day, like you exercising and you just getting after it for a little bit, like the music's in, you get to just focus on like taking care of yourself. Is definitely the biggest thing for me. It's just that mental aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I always try to encourage people, especially nowadays, to do something. Like you don't have to necessarily go to the gym and lift weights. I think it's very beneficial for most people to do that. But if you don't want to lift weights, you don't enjoy lifting weights, whatever it may be, you don't have to do that. Whether it's just like going for a walk with your pets,
Yep.
or going for a bike ride, or whatever it is, and maybe the gym isn't for you. Maybe you like to do stuff just more outdoors, like going for hikes or going on trails. Like you got to do something.
Right.
You can't not do anything, because our bodies are literally designed to do these things. And in a culture that really promotes kind of laziness, between a lot of office jobs and like online video games, like things are really centered around being on your phone, being with technology, not being outdoors. And in our area, especially this time of the year, it's obviously harder to get outside. I mean, with climate change, maybe not, but typically it's hard to get outside during this time of year. But you got to make time for these things, because they're so important to our health, not just our physical health, but our mental health. And it's a crucial aspect of our life, because if you're not taking care of your body in terms of like your fitness level, you're really going to see that mental side deteriorate, and deteriorate probably pretty quickly.
Yep.
And that's not how you want to approach your day-to-day life, because if the classic saying is look how you feel, and if you look in the mirror and you're not satisfied with how you feel, it's going to not only affect your mental, but you're going to look at your physical and just be like, how did this happen?
Right.
So encouraging people to exercise, I think, is a fundamental piece when we're talking about mental health. And in terms of like 2023, it's cool to see the difference that we've had in this year too, where you're finally be able to get back to the gym. And I was kind of limited in my able to get to the gym. Like I still was able to like go on, like I do like walks on the treadmill and stuff to like, obviously you got to move the hamstring to get
Right.
exercise. But it's the do something mindset. Was like, even if I go and lift, even if it's just half-ass, you got to just do it. Because sometimes when you start half-assing it, then you're gonna like, all right, I start to feel a little bit better. Like the endorphins and the chemicals in the body start going. You're lifting. You're like, all right, now I feel a little bit better. And like, it's better to do something than do nothing. And that's
Yeah.
always my mindset when it comes to the gym. Obviously, when you're there, you want to do your best. That's like the preferred um, outcome of what you should do. But just showing up, like you said, is one of the hardest things to do, and that translates to everything. If you don't just show up, you're kind of failing to start from.
Yeah,
So I think that's very difficult with the fitness part, and I'm glad that you brought that up because I think that flows really great with 2023 because we're able to kind of bounce off that.
for sure.
How about like kind of going through the rest of the year, going towards like um, maybe the summer? Like definitely keep walking me through this, and we'll keep bouncing off stuff, whether it's travel, relationships, career oriented, in more coaching stuff with
Yeah.
this year. I'll let you kind of go, and we'll keep going off that.
Yeah, man. So I was lucky to be able to travel a lot this year. I mean, not anywhere crazy, but like enough for me to be able to experience life, different aspects. So like I went to Lake Placid, New York this year. I've gone up to Vermont. I've done all these like really, really cool day trips that you can say. But one of the cool places that I went was with a bunch of the coaches. We all went down to Florida this past December, and we went to Universal. We went to Hollywood Studios. If anyone out there is a huge Harry Potter fan, highly suggest going to Universal for that shit because it is fire. um, and we went to a bowl game for one of the D1 colleges down there. We went to University of Central Florida for a game, Appalachian State versus Miami, Ohio. It downpoured, but couldn't have asked for a more enjoyable time.
Was it just like a bonding thing, or did you guys like have like specific like plans related to like coaching or something?
So usually at the end of the year, we just try to do like our own like de-stressor. The football season at college can be long days. You're working from as soon as you wake up until you feel like you've done what you need to for the day to prepare for your opponent. So it can be stressful depending on who you're playing that week and what you got to do. So for us, it's more of like hey, we made it through the season. Congratulations, everyone. Like, let's go do something to celebrate and just de-stress. Um, so that's always fun.
That was good, and because I remember seeing those pictures recently about that, and just going off the travel aspect, and even just doing like the day trips. I think those are so beneficial, especially for like the mental health of stuff when you're going through the day to day life. You obviously gonna have your job. It's gonna be what it is, and having those things you could look forward to
Yep.
are so important. Because I remember even going back to when I was talking to my therapist about stuff, and this is pulling on a couple years ago, but um, the planning of things, to having that thing to look forward to, makes a lot of the stuff we struggle with day to day worth it. Because if we don't have things to look forward to, that's where the mental health can really take a negative pull on us, and we kind of will look at things in a pessimistic kind of way, and the negativity will creep in. It's like, why am I doing this? There's no point to doing this. And that's not the best way to live your life. I think try to be as positive as you possibly can. Um, Obviously, life is going to happen. You have to roll with the punches sometimes, and things are not always going to work in your favor. But when you're able to do little trips like that, and especially in this area, it's good to work with that and be close by to travel with those different things. And all right, and we're back. Sorry, folks. That's technical difficulties with that one camera. That's why I put that on myself. So like, if I lose footage for that, I don't really care. But we're kind of talking about the traveling aspect, and I went to Cape Cod for the first time this summer. That was a cool experience, and I went with my girlfriend, and we'll talk about relationships after this. But to kind of just go out there and see things, and just see what the Cape is, see what the hype's about a little bit. 'Cause, I mean, I live in this area and I've never been to the Cape. It's kind of crazy, but I mean, it's definitely a more expensive area too. So like, obviously, if you're planning trips down there, be mindful things going to be a little bit more expensive. But having that trip was just so cool to just to get away, and then I like to go up to New Hampshire when I can. So I was able to do a New Hampshire trip as well with my girlfriend, and to make memories together is always a blessing. And then the big trip that I planned this year was Germany with my family. And I did an episode with Jake talking and recapping our podcast, or recapping our trip about Germany. And traveling like internationally is one of the best things that you can do if you have the resources to do that and you have a passport and everything. Do it. Book the trip because it's so worth it to create those memories. And if you're able to do it with people you love and care about, it makes the whole experience worth it. And you'll learn the food that they eat and like you don't really see like I hate saying it like this, but the obesity stuff, like
Yeah.
the stuff that they put in their food is very different than what we put in our food. Um, their cities are like pretty normal to American cities, I'll say that. But as soon as you step outside that, you really get to see the culture of like the communities and like how they come together and they really value like the tight knit communities and they kind of go back towards that like old like time period where everything when you're outside of the cities is very close because obviously if you step outside the city things got dangerous, there's not like electricity and stuff back in the
Yep.
day, so the cities are structured like kind of like I don't know what the right word is to say, but like kind of like dating back in history. So it's like a
Yep.
cool thing to see, and their architecture is different, and it made me reflect on like that trip and the island trip I had in 2022, and I think it's like such a blessing to be able to travel to these different locations and to do that and have that experience with doing some of these day trips. Transitioning, we're going to go towards relationships because for myself and you, we've gone through our own different struggles with relationships up until this point. But luckily, we're both in relationships and we are having positive experiences. And I'll let you kind of talk through some of the stuff that um, you had gone through in terms of kind of like rediscovering yourself. We talked about off podcasts and kind of walking through how this year has kind of gone for you to leading up to where you are now.
Yeah. So we've talked all the time, but just to give a little backstory, I was with someone who just wasn't for me. Um, it led to a lot of different things in my life that I've never experienced before. You can think that person is someone, and then they show true colors. So that was kind of like my idea of self discovery, where like you were saying earlier, where you sometimes you have to take the step back to really think about like what's in front of you and stuff like that. Um, but the thing I went through this year regarded a lot of domestic violence. This person had some sort of thing going on where hands were put on multiple times, and it made it a very hostile environment. My health took a turn. I lost a lot of weight in that time. You think differently in those aspects. Um, where it's also like you question who you are as a person, you question why these things are happening, and with this person it's almost um like they make you question like if you're responsible for them doing that to you. um and the biggest thing for me is now that I'm out of it and like I've had time to reflect, and I'm so grateful that I was able to make it out. um but being able to self-reflect and be like, you're okay. Like you're not a perfect person. Nobody's perfect. But at the end of the day, who you are is very unique and is special. And there's not a single person in this world that deserves that. Um, I know from a men's perspective, and like obviously once I was out of it and I seeked help, and I was talking to professionals about it. It's very rare that men speak up about their issues with domestic violence. It's portrayed as you're being weak, or like you should have done something to stop it, or like for some reason the men are always at fault for even when it happens to themselves, and it's a very common thing that happens. Um, but after speaking to professionals and like getting to the bottom of it, it's very much that um, like who you are as a person is a good person. It's someone that someone someday will cherish who you are and what you bring to the table, and just just love you for who you are. And I'm glad that I'm out of that situation. And um, you kind of get down on your expectations of relationships at that point. And I know you've gone through things in your experiences where you're like, yeah, maybe this dating shit isn't for me anymore. But it's such a breath of fresh air to be out of an unhealthy environment where you can really just focus on yourself and basically relearn what it's like to just be you as an individual and take care of yourself first. And with that, I feel like I found a lot of positivity and just a lot of like happiness, to put it that way. Like I go home and my mom's like, "You just look so happy," and like everything just looks so much more positive. I know I keep saying that, but at the end of the day, that's what life is: just positivity and peace and doing what makes you happy. Um, but yeah, I can say that there's someone now that makes me happy and makes me feel like I'm the only person around. So it's definitely a positive thing and makes me feel good. So up from here going into the new year for sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you felt comfortable enough to speak on that, because as you mentioned, it is uncommon for men to speak up about it because of the perception that will be made by other people, and a lot of time other guys will joke about that and like push down on that. But it is common because a lot of the time you're going to be looked at as you're the man, like you probably enabled that, you probably allowed that, you probably caused that. And that's not always the case. And especially in the situation that you'd gone through, to find yourself in like the way you're speaking about it. I've talked to a lot of different people who've gone through similar things or different things regarding domestic violence, and the emotions are very very similar. Where it's like, is it me? Am I the problem? Did I cause this? And especially, I could understand as a guy from that perspective, where you want to fix the thing. You, especially when you care about the person, you want to like try to like do what's right for them. You want to see what's, maybe something's wrong with them, maybe something's wrong with their upbringing, something happened, like why is this happening this way? And especially when you care, you want to do those things for that person to help them. But it goes to that kind of that stepping backwards, where you have to kind of pull yourself out of those situations when you start to realize things are starting to take a turn. And I'm glad that you were able to get yourself out of a situation like that without things getting very very bad, because situations like that can get very bad. Where they talk about, I think there was a situation in Miami where I think this girl was like a OnlyFans model, and like the boyfriend got like stabbed in the elevator, and they were talking about that, and how the perception was shifting towards the guy being the reason why. And
Yeah.
her story was it was his fault. And I can't remember exactly how that went down, but I know she was like arrested and stuff like that. But situations can get extremely violent,
Yep.
and being able to get yourself out of those situations as safely as possible, because sometimes the situation isn't going to be easy to remove yourself in, especially in relationships where emotions are very high. And to separate, especially if you're in a situation where you're living together on top of that, that's where things can get very tricky and very dangerous for both parties. Not even just the person who's being abused, but the abuser's also in a situation that's not great either.
Right.
And a lot of time there is a lot of trauma involved in both parties, and being able to remove yourself from those violent situations to get to the position to rediscover yourself is so important. And I'm glad that you've been able to start to like work on those things and recover your mental health and recover your mindset to get back to the gym, to start doing those things that you enjoy. uh were you able to work with like, I don't know if I missed this, but like with therapists or anything like that? And like, how has that been for you to kind of actually talk about some of these things in that manner?
Yeah. So like just to finish that kind of thought.
Yeah.
So that person ended up getting arrested because of that. With that being said, someone from domestic violence protection comes and they talk to you and they give you different outlets, let you make a choice whether you don't want to talk to anyone, or like different types of therapists that they'll set you up with and you can meet with. So I definitely went with that route of like talking to a therapist through um, what's happened in that aspect, and it's been huge. It's been wicked beneficial because they put things into like it's a perspective that you can't necessarily see right away. Um, they put it into a perspective where like you really have to take a step back and reflect on the situation and look at it almost from like a third party view instead of just being in your own shoes, which has been huge for me. And not only just because of that incident, but moving forward, it's like being open minded is huge just in life. If you go into anything and you're just like, this is the way it is, it's black and white, um, and like that's just how life is, you miss so much going on around you, whether it's people that you want to interact with, and like you pick up on different things when you're able to look at it open mindedly, or just like your own life and like the way that you go about things, having the ability to be open minded, not only moving forward and like with what you do on a daily basis, but open mindedness to reflect on what you've done, what you've gone through in your life, and being able to put your best foot forward and learn from your past, um, whether good, bad, something you caused, or something that is uncontrollable, um, is huge. It's been one of the biggest things I've learned this year for sure.
Yeah, the self-reflection piece that you can learn from therapy is a huge thing, and something that I always would talk about when I was first discovering therapy and how successful it was for me to kind of talk to someone that isn't going to judge you, that is trained and taught how to handle different emotional traumas, and especially as a guy to kind of put yourself in a position to talk about that stuff where you're like talking about your emotions is like typically in society looked down upon. It's changed over the last several years, but still to have that space will teach you so much, not only about yourself but about other people, like how you said, picking up on cues maybe about body language or different things that maybe that person's getting uncomfortable with something that someone's saying, or maybe um, that person is very anxious, or maybe there's something that they're depressed about that you can't necessarily see on the surface level, but there's certain cues that they're giving out in their language that you might be able to pick up on. It's that open mindedness to not always judge people for their behaviors and actions, to sometimes to question it and look beyond that, because we all have traumas, we all have things that we've gone through in our life to help create who we are, and a lot of that is unpacking that stuff and trying to heal it to the best we can to be the best person we can be. And it sounds like this year has been a big turning point for you to kind of read open that book and look within again. And I'm glad that you've been able to do that, to find a more positive relationship that's working for you. And even the fact that I remember I saw a picture that you guys went to the Giants game and stuff like that. And like, I think that's like cool when you find someone that's willing to do stuff that you also enjoy. And I've been saying like throughout the podcast this year how my relationship has been one of the biggest blessings that I've had in my life, to kind of, as you know, I've gone through my own dating struggles over the last like several years, and to find someone that it's just easy with, like, you
Yeah,
just they just get it. Like, I remember I was talking to Devin on the podcast about, he was talking about you create your own like language with your partner, like you just joke about different
so true.
things, and like the outside world might think you're just weird as fuck, but like your partner gets it, and they're like you're safe in that space. And I think that aspect of the relationship is so pure. It's like you're reconnecting with like your childhood
That's
almost,
it.
and you could be like kids together and just have fun. And it's not so much about like how are we gonna pay for this, how are we gonna do this, like um I hate like my job, I don't want to go to work. Like it gets, you get rid of all that when you're with your person, and it's just about you two having fun, enjoying what you're doing in the moment. And I feel extremely blessed and grateful to say that I found someone that like can do that with me and can enter my space and I can enter their space and we're just together and it's like oneness where you could enjoy life to like the fullest extent. And it goes into that spot where you like what I did think for a while was like this dating shit's just not for me. It's just it's never gonna work. Like I'm never gonna find someone. Like it's just negative, negative, negative. But if you continue to think negatively, you're only gonna attract negativity. And the twist to that though is when you start being a little more positive, you have to be careful of people who are just going to be leeches to that. Because there are people, whether it's like a narcissistic behavior or not, that can leech onto that positivity and then twist it and kind of it's like almost like a vampire. They're going to
Yep.
absorb that from you. And you have to watch out for those people as you become a little bit more positive in your life. But I think having a good relationship can really make or break you as a person. And we're humans. We are kind of hardwired to look for that connection as people, and we do want that romantic part of our life. It's fulfilling. It's kind of like the path that almost like every human kind of goes to at some point, and to kind of experience that on a deep level this year has been like the greatest blessing. And to kind of go back and forth on that is like an interesting thing to have gone through different struggles, but to relate on the fact that we're able to have someone that we truly appreciate and we're able to do stuff with, I think is
For sure.
great.
I'm gonna backtrack a little bit to
Yeah,
that
yeah.
whole negativity thing. So one of the things as I'm discovering more about myself and really just taking a step back, reflecting. One of the things that I came across, it's a saying. It's less BCD, more EFG. So BCD stands for blaming, complaining, and defending. Um, EFG stands for energy, focus, and grit. So this person that I watch on YouTube all the time, they preach no BCD. So the blaming is kind of symbolic of you're irresponsible, you can't be trusted because there's always going to be an excuse for why you didn't get that done. Complaining is just the negativity that you're talking about. Someone that complains all the time isn't typically a fun person to be around. They drain the energy from the room. They kind of bring everyone down a little bit, and it's just not a good time. And then the defending is someone who's too egotistical to admit when they are wrong, and they can't be held accountable for what they're responsible for. With the EFG, if you are able to find a way to bring energy, focus, and grit to what you do, your outcome is endless. So there are plenty of things in this world that we don't like doing, and that's just a given. But if you're able to just be like, yeah, this sucks, I'm bracing that it sucks, but I'm going to go at this 100%. And I'm going to focus on making sure I get it done the right way so I don't have to come back and do it again. You're done with it before you know it, instead of being like, oh, I didn't get this done, or oh, I still have to do this, or this stopped me from doing it. And now it's just lingering and it doesn't stop. And it's just like a snowball effect. Um, so being able to find people in your life, whether it's your romantic partner or your friends, who are able to see things as just like, hey, this sucks, but I'm not going to spend my time complaining about it, or I'm not going to waste my time not doing a good job on it and then finding an excuse as to why I didn't do it right. Just finding people that are just like, hey, let's get this done, and like, let's do it. And we're going to find a way to make it fun and positive. And when it's done, we can sit back and laugh. And, it's a memory that we now have. So especially in your romantic relationship where it's like you're able to just do fun stuff all the time. You're not worried about coming home and being like, hey, how was your day? And they're like, oh, well, so and so said this and this happened and it was so annoying and blah, blah, blah. Like, you can have bad days. That's okay. But when you can come home and be like, hey, how was your day? And they're just like, yeah, it wasn't great, but like, I'm happy it's done. It's over with. I got whatever I needed to get done. And now I'm just chilling.
Yeah, and I think
It's such a
to build off that is how we say things to ourselves.
right.
It's I've been really big on this concept this year is like um the things that we say to ourselves have so much weight that we don't always realize it. If you're constantly like "Oh, I hate myself, I hate myself,
Yeah.
I fucked that up, I hate myself, I hate like your that negative self-talk is really going to manifest in really bad ways, and you don't want that like infiltrating your life because like I knew this in the dating aspect where like Like, I'm never going to find someone. I'm never going to
Yeah.
find someone. Constantly reinforcing that mindset that I'm never going to find someone, already self-sabotaging any possible connection that I could form because my mindset was so negative on the dating aspect. But when it goes to it, and I talked about this recently about manifestation with Troy, he came on
Yep.
recently, and we talked about uh oh, I completely messed up. I think Troy was the last episode. It wasn't even Andrew's. I completely messed that up. I'll fix that at the end. But the whole idea of manifestation that Troy was talking about on episode 164 was the aspect of you got to just let things go. And when you just let things go, like that's when the thing that you want is going to come to you and you're going to be able to actually receive it because you're constantly gripping onto it like I want this to happen this way and it needs to happen this way. Once you let that actually go, then things are going to be a little bit more fulfilling and
Just
it's going to be
control
better.
what you can control.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
And it goes into this concept that been really positive for me this year is, and we're going to kind of transition to start wrapping things up about goal setting for 2024 is nothing changes if nothing changes.
Right.
That's been like, you see it as like a common saying said among places, but for me this year, that really was just like hitting home for me. Is like, if you want something to actually be different, you got to do something different. And whether it's the fitness aspect, whether it's the podcast aspect, whether it's your dating aspect, like if you want something to change, you have to change. And I think that's a positive message to leave a lot of people going into 2024 is if 2023 didn't go the way you want it to, don't repeat those same habits in 2024. You have to actually do something different about those habits and create new habits. And to create new habits, start small. Like if you want to start working out in 2024 and you want to change your diet right away, sometimes doing that crazy change right away isn't going to work. So plan small, do half an hour at the gym and maybe meal prep your lunches and your dinners are what they are. But like slowly plan your stuff out so it's not like this overwhelming thing like you're kind of talking about where you're pushing stuff off and things like that. Like do things slowly and steadily in a small fashion so it's not overwhelming because if you push things off, you keep pushing it off, it's just gonna snowball into something that's super negative and it's not gonna be uh, worth it in the end. You're probably gonna fail if you don't set it up in a way that you can actually succeed. So with that, I kind of want to turn to you and talk to you a little bit about some of the goals for 2024. Some of the things that you maybe have in mind, whether it's in relation to coaching, whether it's in relation to like planning out trips for the year, whatever it is. What's kind of some of the expectations that you are having for 2024?
Yeah, man. So I'm all about growth no matter what. So this year for me personally, just any aspect of life that I am able to grow in, I'm just gonna ride it out. Coaching is obviously a big one. You know, like I said earlier, it's just all about learning. You're constantly a student of the game. So that for me going into this season is just I want to learn as much as possible through the season. Traveling, I know you made me jealous with your Germany trip, so that's definitely on the bucket list this year. Definitely have something in the works to go on some sort of a all-inclusive trip. So that's a goal. And then personally, just being like I said, open-minded is huge. Um, put yourself in a position where you can just go into things happily. Like you're not going into something with a predetermined mindset where it's already going to skew your experience. Experience things for what they are and how they happen, and learn from them. And that's all you can ask for as a person. Um, and then obviously, you know, I'm a big family guy. Um, so spending time with my family is obviously huge. Being the best big brother I can possibly be to my crazy ass siblings is always a always a goal.
More Fortnite W's.
Yeah, can never get too many Fortnite wins. But yeah, man, just enjoying life the best that you possibly can.
And some more
is
wins at
huge for me.
Dartmouth too as well. I
That's
hope.
it.
Yeah.
Bring home another championship.
That's what it's all about. I would say for myself for 2024, to keep the pace with the podcast, because if I can keep the pace, this is episode 165. I'm aiming to get to episode 200 by the end of the year,
Oh yeah.
and the goal is to get to that number. And if I can get to that number by the end of the year, I should have a good average with views and memberships, then I'll probably make a big post about it. And I think that will be a really exciting thing because to hit 200 episodes is fucking
It's nuts.
crazy. So that's like really the goal for this year is consistency and get back to the gym. Probably plan some more trips as well.
You got anything planned?
Not at the moment in terms of international trips. Something that's kind of in the works, but we're kind of seeing schedules with family and shit. So we're kind of figuring that out. But hopefully another international trip. I'm thinking I want to do something out west, whether it's like Portland, Washington, Montana type thing. I think that would be really cool. Dude, my throat's been mad dry. I've been talking way too much. But I'm thinking something out there. I would like to do an all-inclusive trip at some point. That might be 2025, what I'm possibly thinking with schedule-wise. But definitely trying to get some more travel done. Like I said, the out west stuff, I haven't visited that part of the country.
Yeah.
So it's like we have such a great country that we don't always appreciate. And there's a lot of cool things, not besides like cities and stuff.
Yeah.
Like go out to these other states out Midwest and shit. And like there's going to be cool mountains and like
Dude,
different
Colorado
animals.
was amazing.
Yeah, that's another place I want to get to and like see like some of the mountains out there and just like the environment in Colorado is cool. And I think Dion's doing a great thing with the university as well, like bringing a different hype to the area. So I think being able to visit Colorado is definitely on the list as well. Just there's a lot of cool stuff to see and probably get back to hiking a little bit. Try to do a couple more hiking trips this year. But yeah, and I have a project that I'm working on, so we'll see how that translates into the rest of the year. So I'm kind of excited to see how things develop. But I think 2024 has potential to be a really good year, and it's just like you said, another year of growth, another year of progression. We're getting older, so life's getting serious, and it's just like it's going to be cool to see how the next few years pan out. And I'm just glad to be able to do another year in review episode, to have a guest like yourself come on here and talk about stuff. I think it's always great. So I want us to take a chance to start wrapping up the chapter with this episode. I think it's been great to kind of talk about everything that's happened this year, and I appreciate you for coming on here and talking about stuff that's like not only like positive but serious as well, and stuff that you've gone through, because that stuff isn't always easy to talk about. And I always like to thank guests for sharing stuff like that because it is personal. So I appreciate you for doing that. I want to give you the opportunity to kind of wrap this podcast up with whatever you deem motivational. If you have anything you want to say, like if there's nothing, but I want to give you the opportunity to say anything.
Yeah, man. Obviously, I appreciate you having me on here. It's always a blast. But if I had to say anything, live your best life at the end of the day. Surround yourself with people that are positive to you, that bring you happiness. And this year flew by like crazy. So like, don't take things for granted. If you have the opportunity to do something that you've never done before, do it. Doesn't matter if you like it at the end of the day, but like you get to say that you've done something that you would have never expected to do. So yeah, live your life, have fun, and do whatever makes you feel happy. That's what it comes down to.
Perfect. I think it's a great way to wrap up this episode, wrap up 2023. And I look forward to future episodes. I look forward to hearing more success about your coaching career. And I wish you more success in your relationship endeavor with you and your girl. So I wish you guys the best of luck.
Appreciate you.
This has been a difficult episode with my camera. It's not even working over here. I have to check on that later. I messed up the beginning of the episode. Shout out to Troy Travasso. I totally messed up the intro, and shout out to Andrew Berderwoo, who probably appreciate the extra shout out. But I'll shout out that really quick. Episode 164 was with Troy Travassos. He is working at a big four in like public accounting. We talked about that. We talked about going through kind of rediscovering of self, kind of similar to what we talked about here. And we talked a lot about energy and manifestation. It was a really cool episode. So I wanted to circle back to that to give Troy his proper flowers. I don't know if you even listened to this episode, but I wanted to correct myself because that was a terrible, terrible thing. It's been a crazy end of the year. Like it's been all over the place.
You'd have it down by 164. Huh?
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever messed it up like that, to be honest. It's kind of crazy. So I think it's more impressive, but it's been a lot of drinking around the holidays and everything. So this has been a crazy one, but I appreciate you guys for being great guests. See, I'm already messing everything up. Being great listeners, being great supporters. I want to thank everyone who has supported the podcast over the last several years, especially the guests that came on in 2023. I can't say thank you enough for anyone who's been on the podcast in general, because this podcast doesn't exist without anyone that has sat across from me and talked about their life story. So I will always be forever grateful to every single person that has stepped foot into my house, or I've come to their house or their place to record an episode, because it's giving me a lot more meaning in my life. So I wanted to take a chance to thank everyone for that. If you guys like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family, share with your grandma. Check out the carrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you want to watch the podcast, go on YouTube, search the Carroll Connection, or at Jared M. Carroll, and it'll pop up right for you. And if you want to be a guest or return as a guest in 2024, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll or at the Carroll Connection, and we'll set that up. So, till next time, guys, peace.